When it comes to shopping, I love to shop small, and supporting business owners who are also cowgirls is even better. High Call Outfitters, located in Great Bend, Kansas, is owned and operated by my mentor and cowgirl friend, Julie Miller. Being immersed in the Western lifestyle herself, Julie has a unique understanding of cowboy and cowgirl needs, both in and out of the arena. High Call's curated collection of apparel and footwear focuses on bringing fit, function, and fashion together so you can look and feel your best. From corporate cowgirl looks that will have everyone in the office asking, "Where did you get your outfit?" to rodeo ready attire that equips you with extra confidence as you back in the box to every occasion in between. You're sure to find something special for everyone on your list at High Call Outfitters. Visit their website at highcalloutfitters.com or stop by their beautiful brick and mortar location if you're ever traveling through Great Bend, Kansas. Remember, friend, High Call has it all.
Hey, y'all, and welcome. You're listening to the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Dawn Johnson, small-town cowgirl with Southern roots, blazing a trail as a Midwest ranch wife, mama, and businesswoman. The mission of Cowgirl Confessions is to share the wonderfully wild and Western life stories of cowgirls from all walks of life. We'll talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle. Legendary cowgirl Dale Evans said it best. Cowgirl is a pioneer spirit, a special brand of American courage. The cowgirl faces life head on, lives by her own lights, and makes no excuses. Cowgirls take stands. They speak up. They defend the things they hold dear. A cowgirl might be a rancher, a barrel racer, a bull rider, or an actress, but she's just as likely to be a checker at the local Winn-Dixie, a full-time mother, a banker, an attorney, or an astronaut. If you're into wet saddle blankets, talks with God, buckets full of laughter, and the life lessons learned in the process, kick off your boots and settle in. I pray these stories encourage, empower, and give you just the leg up you need. Here's to embracing the cowgirl state of mind, no matter how wild and Western life may get along the way.
Hi there, friend. Welcome to another episode of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. Do you know what I enjoy? Probably more than even like when I have a successful moment. Like, because don't get me wrong, whenever I am like, "Oh, yes, I finally did it. Like, I reached this point or I achieved this thing." Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited because I've worked hard for it, whatever it might be. But you know what gets me like just as excited and quite honestly, sometimes more excited? It's when I see people I care about, people I love that have taken a bet on themselves. They've chosen to like go all in on something, do the work, and then seeing them be successful. That gets me like some kind of excited. And today's episode is going to be a small little sampling of me wearing the podcast guest hat and a dear friend of mine, Shaun Spivey, being the podcast host. Now, you need to know that I'm all about podcasting, okay? And anytime somebody says, well, should I start a podcast? Should I do this? Like, or on the fence, right? That 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell somebody, yes, you should do it after we go through some initial like Q&A of what's your purpose, kind of what's your idea, what's your plan? Do you have a plan? Like those kind of grassroots things that honestly, like you've got to have enough of a reason. Like your why has to be deeply rooted and you have to have a clear understanding of your why, because the time it takes to produce a podcast, the energy you put into it, like it can be a little taxing. I mean, I'm just going to be honest, like you've got to be committed for it to be worth your time and effort, and you're in it for the long haul, basically. So Shaun and his wife, Carol, they are the founders of the Small Town Life apparel brand. And when Shaun reached out to me we were talking about a lot of different things in business, but he shared with me his idea of wanting to start a podcast. And we went through all this and I was like, yeah, you should definitely do that. And then I got to be the one that gave him that push of, hey, I believe in you. Hey, let's quit sitting on the fence. Hey, let's take this next step and do the daggum thing, just like my friend Jenna did for me. So those of you who maybe aren't as familiar with how this podcast came to be, the Cowgirl Confessions podcast, it literally started because my friend Jenna Smeek, now Jenna Smeek Soto, we were kind of in this mastermind group, and she had a podcast already. We were talking about writing books, working on books, and she was like, hey, Dakota, you need to start a podcast. And I was like, yeah, okay. And literally after about 2 days of me hawing around back and forth about starting a podcast, Jenna had set up my like user, name and password and all that for me, set up an account for me on what was called Anchor then. It's now called Spotify for podcasters. She had set all that up for me and sent me an email with my username and password. And I thought, all right, then I guess I'm going to have a podcast, because if she believes in me enough to have taken her time and energy to do this, that's the push I needed. Well, fast forward a few years later, and I had the privilege of getting to do that for my friend Shaun here with the Small Town Life. And it was just like the best feeling. I mean, the best feeling. And being able now to listen to his podcast is so extremely special, because what they're doing with the Small Town Life brand is so much more than selling ball caps and shirts and, mid layers. And it's about creating an experience. It truly is. And I just really believe in what their family has built and the story behind their brand and their purpose, what they're trying to do. And so seeing him go out and, really be bringing people together to collect those stories and share them on his podcast, The Small Town Life, Conversations from the Porch. I'm just like, hey, attaboy, Shaun, attaboy. So this is a snippet of our conversation. I actually got to be one of his first guests on his podcast. You can go listen to this full episode. It's episode 5 of The Small Town Life, Conversations from the Porch. I hope you enjoy it. And I want to encourage you today, if you have the opportunity to give a friend, a loved one in your life, that gentle nudge to get them to quit sitting on the fence and start taking action and doing the thing that they've been talking about doing, go do it. Help them take that next step by showing them that you believe in them so much that you'll take action on it, and you bring them along with you. I often think of it as, like you're sitting on the fence and you decide you're going to go ride your horse. Well, like, be the person that's just going to be like, hey, already saddled your horse. You throw them the bridle and say, let's go, come with me. Kind of that, mindset. All right, friend, I hope you enjoyed this snippet of our conversation. This is the Small Town Life, Conversations from the Porch.
Even though what you were doing with the rodeo and all that stuff, that led you down a career path, really it didn't change. It wasn't a struggle for a small town life person like yourself, because rodeo is very small town. It's a very close-knit community. We do a lot of venues where we go set up at rodeos and we sell our stuff. And I can tell quick that it's a family thing.
Yep.
It's so close-knit. They know each other. They're literally cheering on the other contestants from the other end when they've just lost. But they're cheering on the next one because they're still winning. They're still riding that bull, or they're still doing whatever. But was there any hurdle that you had to overcome in the industry that you're in now that might have been because you were from a small area?
That's a really great question. And I never felt like there was anything that held me back, or and I guess part of that, Shaun's, because I've never really thought, I grew up in a small town and I'm not going to have an opportunity because of it. I've just never been wired that way, and a lot of that I think is because of my raising. I had people investing in me, whether it was my mom or aunts, uncles, teachers, coaches. I never thought I couldn't go on and do something, but I do think that, like I mentioned earlier, there's this certain amount sometimes, this maybe when you're from the South, sometimes that you may not be as educated or sound as educated.
Absolutely.
And I do think that, that was just something early on. I had to, the areas that I felt like would maybe hinder me, and this sounds so simple and silly at the same time, but I'm going to share it because there's somebody that needs to hear this.
Right.
My grandma, she's a school teacher. So when I was in college, going to school for broadcast journalism, there were a couple of, verbs when you're making your have been, have gone, have done, those things that
no,
I
don't, but I'll believe you. Okay.
Okay, but grammar, basically.
Go right ahead, yeah.
Proper
Miss
grammar.
Menifee knows exactly what you're talking about.
Proper grammar. And so my gran, she would correct me, and she'd say, Dakota, this is, and just like a lot of folks do, they'll correct you for something, you're like, I don't know why they're doing that. She told me one day, she said, you've got so much potential that I don't want somebody to think that you can't, that they hear you use these verbs in an incorrect form, incorrect tense, and they think you're not educated enough for this type of opportunity.
Right.
And when she told me that, I was a sophomore in college, and I thought, okay, Gran, I get it. I'm going to figure this out. So you know what I did? I got a postcard with all of these verbs that I had trouble with, little index postcard type deal, and I taped it up there by my speedometer. And when I was driving, I would practice, these verbs that I was having trouble with. And I know that sounds so silly, but it could have been a hurdle. It could have been a situation where I sent an email or I got up to speak in front of a group of people and I didn't know how to communicate in a way that made me sound like I was smart enough for the job. And so I guess that's something that sticks out in my mind when you ask that. But I mean, really overall, I've had more people welcome me, be very welcoming in that I am from a small town. Versus now the whole yes ma'am, no ma'am. I've had folks say, no, don't call me that. That's offensive because I'm not that old, and I'll just say, I'll do my best not to. I got a whole lot of whippings as a youngin' to make sure I had those manners. So I'm gonna do my best.
Absolutely.
But I mean, outside of that, like I just feel like folks have really embraced the fact that I did come from a small town. In my experience, it hasn't been a hurdle because I never was going to let it be one.
Yeah.
Thank you for spending your time with me on the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm so glad y'all stopped by. If you could take a moment to share this episode and tag us on social media, I'd be happier than a cowgirl in a sea of buy one, get one vintage turquoise. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. New episodes will be released bi-monthly. Please leave us a review if you feel so led by going to iTunes. Your feedback will really help us breed the idea of grabbing life by the horns with a cowgirl state of mind into women across the globe. Some that may have never even had the privilege to throw their leg over a horse, but could most certainly use the cowgirl state of mind while navigating life. Thanks again, y'all. Until next time, keep pursuing your dreams with that all go and no woe mentality. Remember, you're writing a story that's worth saddling up for, sister.